Swap. Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I am Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me we have some more RPG horror stories. Apparently my viewer retention goes up every single time I wiggle my tail. So for the sake of the algorithm, I introduce you Tail Wiggles. Gotta feed the algorithm. Anyway, let's get some RPG horror stories for today. There isn't a title for this story, so I'll come up with my own. A Bad Player and DM. Hey Morrow, my boyfriend introduced me to your channel and I really enjoy watching you. Here's a story of my own. Enjoy. It might be a bit long. I've quite the story from over the past couple of years since I first started getting into D&D with my boyfriend. A friend of his, who I'll call Toronto, was also new to the game. Wanted to try DMing, so another friend of his, who I'll call Seattle, my boyfriend Nashville, and myself Raleigh, all fake names obviously, decided we'd give it a try. My boyfriend is an experienced player and DM, which was nice since the rest of us were newbies. The first campaign started with Lost Mine of Fandelver. Lamop. My first issue with Toronto as a DM started very early on, like with character development. Everybody else had their character pretty filled out, two of the classes I would have considered were taken, and the DM didn't want us doubling up on anything because he didn't want us fighting over items or spells. So for my very first time playing, I chose a druid because it sounded pretty cool, but quickly found out that it was too much for my first character ever. Yeah, druid is quite a bit because not only do you have full spell casting, you also have wild shapes. If you pick druid circle of the moon, you have even more wild shaping you can do, and wrapping your head around that stuff can be kind of difficult because there's a lot. It's a lot to process through. A lot of stat blocks to keep up with, a lot of spells to keep up with, a lot of everything to keep up with in general. Mary had a difficult time with it too, but she loves animals, so for her it was a no-brainer to pick Circle of the Moon because animals, and she could be animals. She could be a wolf, her favorite animal. I liked her, but I never really got to know her. Toronto was playing a Tabaxi monk rogue. This was his first character. His friend Seattle played a half-orc wizard bard. My boyfriend Nashville started out with a half-elf ranger. I started with an elf druid. The DMPC Tabaxi rogue monk killed an NPC we took hostage for information and said he died from an arrow through a window 6 inches wide that we hadn't blocked on the 3rd floor in a town with no building higher than 1 story. He didn't trust us to make a check against an encounter we'd made and had his DMPC do it for us, taking the fight away from us and sucked all the fun out of it. He introduced Death Knights early on to hunt us down for powerful relics we found. It was a cool idea, but both parts of the idea were forgotten unless he needed a strong enemy to discourage us. Introducing bad guys early on is cool and all, especially if it's like a introduction to it. It's almost like when a bad guy is introduced into an anime game early on, kicks your ass and walks away, so you have a redemption story to come back and kick their ass again. But having your DMPC do all the roles for you because you don't trust your players to do that, that's a sucky thing to do. Don't do that sort of thing. Don't build your campaigns and sessions around where only your DMPC can do the roles in order to make sure that the checks are met. Let people roll, let people discover stuff on their own, let people do the actual actions, and have your DMPC be a support, not somebody that takes over the main action. Ghosts of the Salt Marsh, Goths. Toronto introduced an island based on a horror movie, Saw, he and Seattle had seen. I've only seen parts of it, and Nashville hadn't seen it all. Nashville had to convince him to let us do checks because of this, with neither of us getting the reference. He assumed we knew the movie and was extremely reluctant, almost refusing to let us do anything to try to solve the puzzle the way it had been done in the movie, even though we kept telling him we didn't know how to solve it. If people haven't seen the movie, then how the hell are they supposed to know how to solve the puzzle? He caused my PC to become a werewolf lord, something he found online, but because Nashville's elf was nearby when I was turned and he was trying to help me, he was affected too. So every time I turned, he was turned into a regular werewolf against his will. I could control my changes and change the number of times equal to my proficiency bonus per long rest, but we couldn't cure Nashville because the werewolf lord we killed and got my ability from died. And yet we couldn't cure him through me for whatever reasons. He gave us items from Critical Role that scaled as we leveled and then got mad when it made us too strong. He caused Nashville's character to be eaten by some homebrew dragon who couldn't beat his stealth check just because he rolled lowest. Nashville rolled a 26, path without a trace, high dex, expertise. Nashville's half-elf ranger left to deal with a family matter, and a badass half-orc paladin joined the party. A 26 stealth roll is still not gonna let you get past that even though you have path without a trace, high dex, and expertise, bruh. It's a 26. Also, all the other stuff, it sounds like a balancing issue and a complete incompetence by the DM. Or at least not having the ability to rethink your actions or retcon it for the sake of making it more easier and more better, instead of just sticking to the guns for whatever reason and being upset and butthurt over that. Why? If you give your players critical role items without considering the consequences of thine actions, and they get mad on it, you can only be mad at yourself for that sort of thing, dummy. This DM is silly, dude. This DM is just silly. These sort of things could just be resolved if you would just be like, hey guys, I made a mistake. I am sorry. Could we please retcon some of this stuff? But no, he's sticking to his guns, even to his own detriment. Why? Out of the Abyss. He made the book about himself and his DMPC being missing and resolving his DMPC's character arc. He introduced 2 more DMPCs to play different classes. Both were kids of the first missing DMPC that he justified using time travel so they were young adults, but somehow his tabaxi wasn't old. All 3 wound up being the same age or close to. He railroaded us after he saved a town and stopped the demon summoning with creative solutions, only to make the summoning still happen because the book said to, and he wasn't creative enough to find a way around it. Oh my god. I haven't read the book. I've not read any of the modules and stuff. Pretty sure none of the books ever say you have to have something happen. But even if it does for whatever reason, it's your game DM. You don't have to have something happen just because of some lame excuse that the book told me to, or things have to happen that way. If the players are having fun and they found a creative solution and it sounds like a really cool thing and sounds like a great idea, and logically I guess it could work out, and if you want it to work out, if you want a players to succeed, just have it work out. You are the DM. You can change anything, any part or all part about the module. Obviously, this is not a script. This is not a play. People don't have a script to follow, that have directions to follow. This is an improvised roleplay game. Just improvise and roleplay. And that's fine, but it sucked the fun out of the rest of the session, and Nashville got majorly pissed and turned out the rest of that session because the cool things were his ideas, and otherwise, they seem to have gone well. I decided I want to change my character because I wasn't happy with how she was. I wanted to try something different. I had a whole idea for what I wanted to happen with her and how I wanted it to go. And I told him my idea. And instead of starting to build up to it so it might look cool, he didn't do anything that I told him. Instead, he basically just killed her in a really stupid, boring way that really irritated me. He got upset that we didn't care about his DMPC character arc and weren't as invested in it as he was. He ended the book shortly after this. Nashville made another PC to help play a role the party needed, a support dragonborn sorcerer, and Toronto asked if his DMPC could have her as a wife. Nashville said sure, but he was going to dictate her personality, and Toronto agreed. Toronto then asked if he could have a child with Nashville's PC, and Nashville play that NPC's son. He was then upset when the child was an adult who didn't know his dad and wasn't impressed with Toronto's DMPC coming back into his life while chasing kids he had with another woman. Toronto then lost interest in the NPC, though Nashville picked up on this and salvaged it a little while remaining true to his idea of the NPC. I gotta be honest, I don't know how to feel about this specific DM. Toronto seems like a kind of guy that wants to play for the sake of playing for his own enjoyment, not for players' enjoyment. Obviously, if you're DMing, you want to make sure that you are having fun as your players are having fun. But I feel like the priority balance of what's more important for Toronto is more towards himself than is towards the players. It feels like he's focusing too much about what he wants to do over what his players want to do instead of having a proper balance. And he wants to have this NPC and have the DMPC be important and the DMPC children be important and be married to a player's PC and have kids with that player's PC and be able to have the PC be controlled but have it to play a specific way. But if he doesn't play a specific way, he basically gets upset and pissy and becomes disillusioned by the idea. I don't know, man. I don't know what the word is. But it feels like the guy's prioritizing himself over the players, not balancing things out. And that's kind of a recipe for disaster. Rime over the Frost Maiden. Toronto decides to run his adventure after telling Nashville that he didn't want to play in because it was too dark. He introduced a Bahir after Nashville's paladin took the gift to the metallic dragon feed and met a silver dragon. Then he got mad that we were hesitant because it was going to kill all dragons, including the silver dragon. He gave mine in Nashville's PC permanent madness because it stood too close to a giant obelisk of Cordlin for too long, which only happened because we stayed to give Seattle time to resolve his PC's arc with a long recurring villain. Seattle didn't get a resolution before because he and his PC were always drunk and his PC had been in the Underdark for too long during time skip. Toronto used spells he didn't fully understand in combat. He annihilated Nashville's PC to nothing. I didn't know it would happen. He had to force a wish spell to save him. Okay, like it sounds crappy, but all I'm imagining is a DM basically going, ooh, disintegrate spell, let's use that. It does a lot of damage, cool. Let's not read the rest of the text. The BBG uses disintegrate on your paladin. It deals this much damage. Rules is written, my paladin is just dead and gone and absolutely obliterated and destroyed, so thanks DM. Wish spell! You're the DM, you have plenty of time, you have ample time to prepare yourself for anything that's gonna happen. Read the damn spell, please. He got burnt out after things weren't fun because we were too strong. Asked Nashville, who was already DMing on Wednesdays, to take over so we could finish. Nashville did take over, but chose not to play with us then because he didn't feel right having a DMPC. Toronto hadn't DM'd since because he's too scared to mess up again and says he has memory issues. It doesn't do anything to get around that. Toronto wasn't any easy as a player and didn't like when Nashville finally added the challenge we were missing. Toronto sounds like they want to DM and they want to be at the DMC, but they're not willing to improve or try to learn from the mistakes or take feedback or really anything. They just want things to just magically happen. DMing is not easy. It's gonna take a bit of while to like get used to DMing and the proper etiquette of DMing and everything like that. Balancing the combat, making sure the story is coherent, making sure the spells are read and actually used properly, making sure things aren't blown out of proportion and things can be properly retconned if they need to be retconned. With proper thought and dedication and practice with DMing, anybody can become a really good DM, or at least good enough DM for your table. You don't have to be the best DM. Nobody is the best DM. Nobody out there is the greatest DM ever, and people think they're the greatest DM ever. They probably have an ego problem. So the only spot you need to fill is be good enough DM for your table, not the best DM all around. General DM issues of Toronto. Overloaded us with magic items and wondered why we didn't use them. Got mad when Seattle didn't want to use Sword of Cast because of the detriments the sword gives the user. Introduced NPCs in DMPC he asked Nashville to voice because he didn't want to talk to himself. He also dated them with Rogue and Monk. Was very inexperienced but didn't take help and got frustrated when it was offered. This point here, there's probably other points that matter, but being frustrated when somebody tries to offer you help or criticism or tries to like help out in any way, why? You're given feedback, you're given ways to how to make things run smoothly, but instead of listening, you just get upset and pissy. Listen for once, Toronto. If Toronto were to listen a little bit, I bet he'll become a better DM in no time. I mean, it'll take a little bit, but it's about learning and improving. In order to learn and improve, you have to want to learn and improve. If Toronto doesn't want that, then this game has failed from the start. He made taking any tools that weren't thieves' tools useless because you did nothing with them. Complained we were too strong, but wouldn't take items off of us. Also got mad when we didn't use some items, magic sword, staff, etc. because we had too many and lacked our character's setup. He had us roll 4d6 for stats and re-roll 1s and 2s. No one had below a 12. Played different books to get to level 20 and didn't want to play any books he DM'd because he would remember and be bored. Had major main character syndrome for his DMPC. Didn't want to read a chapter of a book before we played it. He wanted to keep the surprise for himself at PC, so he would only read the chapter the week before he played it and usually read as we went to, especially in the beginning. God, this guy. He's comically awful. If you're the DM for your group and you're working off of a book, off of a module, you need to make sure you read ahead to know what's going to happen so you can have proper preparation for everything that's going to happen. Maybe there's a puzzle, maybe there's an encounter, maybe there's a social interaction. You got to make sure as a DM that you're prepared for that. It feels like Toronto doesn't want to play a DM, he wants to play a PC. And maybe he wants to play both, but he doesn't want to ruin the immersion for himself. Pick one or the other, or just play as a PC if you don't want to DM. Simple as that. DMs have different responsibilities than PCs have. PCs have to worry about their actions and reactions as their characters. DMs worry about everything else, including the planning for the world and what's gonna happen and what sort of encounters they're gonna encounter. You need to plan ahead, which means you need to read ahead. If you're not reading ahead, you're constantly gonna be woefully unprepared for everything. Didn't listen to or care about our ideas for our characters, but really want us to care about his DMPCs. Got upset if we asked questions the book didn't answer, or came up with ideas outside the book because he couldn't improvise. Did do some cool things and try things, just wouldn't take advice from the experienced players, Nashville or us on our own PCs. At one point, Nashville was trying to make his own little maps based on how Toronto was trying to describe locations set up, and he sent Toronto a picture of one he was making. Toronto told him he wasn't drawing it right and he should just stop and give up because it was stupid. Wow, doesn't even take help from somebody that's trying to help out and make an actual interactive map for people people to walk around on and stuff and get immersed. Wow. Well, there's a bit of part of this about him as a player, and I'm kind of interested in maybe he's better as a player than he is as a DM, or if he's just a double disaster. Toronto as a player. Asked Nashville to DM on a new day because Toronto wanted to play without Seattle and be a player. Nashville DM'd on Wednesday while Toronto did weekends until Nashville had to do both. On Saturdays, he continued to play his DMPC Rogue Monk with the following items abilities. He had these from the start. Could transform into a Mind Flayer form with all new abilities, stats, and gear. Did not want any negative effects on his PCs. His stats couldn't be lowered given madness, reduce HP for longer than a long rest. Would immediately want one. Couldn't be cursed or turned to lycanthropy. So he doesn't want to play as a PC. He wants to play as a DMPC with these impossible, incredible, just overpowered things that he could just do that makes him better than everybody else. Oh my god, this guy, I feel like he needs to go through a crash course of what a DMPC is supposed to be instead of just making his bestest character ever. Because this is ridiculous. He has an ability to turn to Mind Flayer just on a whim. Of course he does. Of course he does. He's his DMPC. Of course his DMPC is the greatest ever. Ran from any encounter too difficult or looked like he might die or wouldn't be good at, despite Nashville promising no one would die permanently unless they wanted to. Sulked anytime he had a spell miss because his slots are limited. Always had to have some kind of spell casting because melee characters are useless at high levels. Never seemed to roll below 15 on anything. Min-maxed his PCs and always wanted to roll physical dice because virtual dice aren't fun. Would take healing spells to heal himself but not others, and always left other PCs to die, namely mine, and then had the nerve to wonder later why my character never wanted to help his. Oh my god, this guy is funny. This guy is genuinely funny. Frustrating, but oh my god, he's funny as hell. I know laughing at this situation is just like mean, but like this guy just everything that you don't want to have in a player or a DM. Either one of those. This is the kind of person you don't want to have at a table. Listen, if you ever need an example of what kind of person you don't want at the table, it's this guy right here. He's the kind of guy that is so self-centered, selfish, doesn't want to cooperate with the teammates, always makes his DMPCs overpowered, but yet unable to completely do anything because he's too scared to ever have the DMPCs get hurt in the slightest, not even a little boo-boo scratch. This guy just sucks to play with in general. Toronto in a weekend campaign, part 1. Would metagame after becoming a full player and told Seattle and me what to do. Got annoyed that Nashville had a different playstyle and didn't use his ideas. Nashville just wanted to finish the book and campaign at this point. He got mad that Nashville killed the Behir and showed us the aftermath of something related to Nashville's paladin. Nashville did not use any of his PCs as a DMPC. Asked Nashville for an illithid girlfriend character and gave up on her because no one else cared for her. Toronto and Seattle both had various love interests for their characters, but Toronto had the most and didn't like that none of us cared about them. God, this guy is so self-centered. I want to have an illicit girlfriend. Nobody cares about what I want or what I'm having? Well, I'm bored of her now. It's like the me from Toy Story. I don't want to play with you anymore. Drop. This guy wants to be the center of attention for everything, and that's the worst thing. He is a main character syndrome DM and player, which is awful. Also gave up on freeing her when puzzle was too hard. Was kept in some kind of anti-magic prison. Nashville still let us get her out just for fun of it and to make him happy. Try to claim physics and laws of nature after BBG was using clever trick to make distance between us. Previously said this isn't real life when it was brought up to him as a joke. TTRPGs don't have physics and logic, they have rules and mechanics. Follow those, don't draw the physics and logic away into a busted situation. Weekend campaign part 2, Strixhaven. Made a twin-headed dragonborn, one head red, the other blue, and went to make her the daughter of Monk Rogue and Tiamat. Nashville said nope. Complained loudly when magic items didn't match the college she wanted to join in the future. Wouldn't be in it until 3 levels later and could buy them. Focused on dating an NPC, then complained more when after only 4 dates, she didn't fully love him and he missed out on other things. Left out characters to die when the battle got too hard, as usual. Verbally told us ahead of time not to date NPC mentioned before, had seen her pick and promo stuff. I was actually going to name one of my PCs for this campaign unintentionally the same as the NPC Toronto wanted to date, but then was advised not to by Nashville because we both knew Toronto would have a fit and it would get confusing. I gotta stop myself reading this because you guys have been around for so long and you already know this guy's gonna be throwing a fit. What made you guys not want to kick him out already by this point? If you guys are clearly showing signs that you're aware of his problem player behavior. At the same time, I have no idea how close y'all are. Maybe you guys are best friends IRL, maybe known each other for 10, 20, 100,000 years, who knows. When it comes to these sort of things, if it's somebody you know, or like a family member or something or what have you, if it's somebody you have relations with, like friendly relations and stuff, not relationship wise, and that's the reason why you don't want to kick him out because you know them for so long and you don't want to be mean, I mean, I understand that, but oh my god, is this really making y'all have fun just dealing with this and tolerating this? Nashville gave us options on how to play a minigame and try to make it more fun, and after Seattle and I let him choose because we thought it would make him happy, he got mad and complained loudly it was boring when we used the original rules because this was what he, Toronto, wanted. He thought Nashville's rules were too complicated. Neither Seattle nor I had a problem with either way, but we went with what Toronto wanted because we thought it would be easier than arguing. God, you guys are in pain. I can feel the pain through the text. If it was easier than arguing, then maybe getting rid of him would have been even easier. I mean, obviously hindsight 2020 and stuff, but like, good lord. Toronto didn't like when another PC joined a job or club he wanted to because he won't feel unique and I won't have anything left to say. Wednesday Campaign Part 1, Horde of the Dragon Queen. Made a flying high elf who couldn't be hit or made to feel bad by an NPC, inserted himself to one-on-one fight against the in-game agreement with high elf and was said when he punished, wanting to quit. It was myself, Toronto, Nashville in this campaign, myself in Nashville at Nashville's house, and then Toronto on the phone. This was the campaign he didn't want Seattle involved with because his elf was too scared to continue. Campaign ends after 3 sessions, oh my god. Wednesday Campaign Part 2, Homebrew in Feywild. Nashville made this to give himself time to read a new book. Metagame to say his PCs with no connection or no knowledge of the Feywild wouldn't fall for their tricks and didn't talk to them. Let my PC die, again, because he didn't want the level of exhaustion saving the woman we were sent to save to leave the Feywild left me to fight 3 wolves on my own. Nashville took pity on me so we didn't fail the mission and could leave. Wednesday Campaign Part 3, Dragon Heist. Things started well enough. We completed Sunless Citadel, but Toronto insisted on turning Bugbear NPC into his girlfriend after sparing her. Bugbear was a warden over an enslaved NPC, and Toronto begged us to spare her or threatened he'd quit. DM relented. This guy just wants to romance everybody and everything. Dude, play a visual novel. That's the time you can romance everybody and anybody at this point. Toronto decided his PC was a vessel of Mistra and she could inhabit his body. Nashville said no at first, but after Toronto said he wouldn't make himself the main character, Nashville relented. That was a terrible mistake. Toronto asked for a thief NPC girlfriend in addition to the bugbear he deeply loved. He threatened to quit and DM relented. Just let him quit, dude. Just let him quit. Let him go. He is completely unnecessary to y'all having fun. Just let him go. Let him be. If he's threatening to quit so much, just let him. He asked for a stealth mission with his new thief girlfriend. I got mad when it didn't go how he wanted to. Nashville offered a redo to it and Toronto still didn't like it because he didn't know what he was supposed to do and barely participated. Toronto got mad when his faction he joined didn't give carte blanche to do whatever he wanted. Nashville very clearly told him it wouldn't before Toronto joined them. He quit campaign after Nashville made a tragic NPC he couldn't save. Nashville and I finished it, and he started teaching me how to DM. Wednesday Campaign 4, Witchlight. Toronto complained when no one treated his PC like they were the main character. Sulk when he lost any game prize given a random in PvP carnival game because he wanted them. Campaign ended after 5 sessions because Nashville burnt out from dealing with Toronto. It was my turn to DM. There's like 1.5 pages left over, so I'm hoping in this situation something happens. Please, something happens. Somebody please get a clue and just get this guy out of here. Wednesday Campaign 5, Forge of Fury. Played a Space Elf Warlock insisting on having a familiar who couldn't be killed but still used in combat. Got mad after Nashville took a high risk, high reward chance and said he didn't get to do anything, yet he didn't have any ideas or wanted to go down into the Dragon's Den. Wednesday Campaign 6, Witchlight 2.0. Seattle came back to play with us at mine and Nashville's insistence. Toronto picked 2 Spelljammer races with lazy self-indulgent backgrounds. Thrakian Fighter, who was asked into Strixhaven for 1 year and then dropped out. Astro Elf Bloodhunter, who somehow got to Ravnica, and became a Radko's cultist. chose both backgrounds to get spellcasting and didn't sync to story. He refused to make Curse plot hook because he didn't want to be disadvantaged. Didn't care about Warlock plot hook he jumped on either. Told players events he wanted and told them not to pick those ones. Got upset when another PC won Witchlight Carnival at end because his Blood Hunter was a circus performer, but Toronto didn't bother to show it. Metagamed again to not fall into fate tricks and stop session for 10 minutes to argue how he wouldn't fall into a trap. After Nashville's PC died, Toronto hemmed and hawed for 15 minutes because he didn't want to take the hag deal to bring them back, had a week to think about it, and still tried to bargain, and when time came for the next session, he still complained and spent 20 minutes of the session making excuses. After making the deal and random curse was not what he wanted, he became melodramatic and said his character whose curse he didn't like would just wander the Feywild and he would only do combat. Over the next week, I gave him a couple of different options to change the deal, each time a little worse considering he was working with a hag and he fussed over everything and kept trying to bargain. Then he wondered why his abrasive blood hunter didn't have friends at a party. Honestly, I should be wondering why he even has friends that tolerate him in the first place. God, you guys are so tolerant. You guys are so... You must have either felt really bad for him, or you must have been like a family member, or maybe the thought of him knowing y'all's addresses was like a danger or something. I have no idea. Y'all are a resilient group of people that give this guy way too much benefit of a doubt. Finally, because he was still upset with his deal, I took it back, knowing Nashville's PC would die. Toronto didn't care. He just didn't want to be disadvantaged at all in any way, and never cared about what happened to anyone else's characters anyway. Nashville was a saint about it and took it with grace, saying he cared, but if that was what Toronto wanted to do, he should just own up to it. Toronto never wanted to own up to anything though, because he didn't want us to think badly of him, even though everything he wanted or didn't want for his character always meant someone else got hurt or killed. Oh my god, please tell me you kicked this person out of your life, and after this specific moment you chewed him out like crazy. This guy deserves a kick in the ass. Like, maybe not a physical kick in the ass, I don't condone like physical violence, but man, I wish y'all gave him like a full 4-hour chew out for his horrible, terrible, crappy piece of shit behavior. What a scumbag. What an absolute scumbag. Y'all are too kind for somebody like this. Y'all should have been way more stern. Y'all should have told him to pipe the f down way early on and not let him get away with anything. I'm not gonna say y'all at fault for this whole thing. Clearly the problem comes from the problem player, but the people that do nothing about the problem player, you kind of not helping the issue either. The lesson we should all learn from the story is, if you find somebody being a problem way early on, you gotta nip in the butt as soon as possible, because otherwise it evolves into multiple campaigns being ruined by a single selfish individual that only thinks about themselves and never about what anybody else wants to do. This guy sucks as a player, as a DM, and as a person, and I hope you removed him out of your life pronto. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.